Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Birch Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Autumn Dove, and I'm going to be sipping on my ginger peach tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, deep yellow, burnt umber, which I will call brown, fire red, green oxide, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors too if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that we'll be using for some drawing later, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paints and the chalk and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint. The colors I'm going to be using are white, brown, yellow, and red. And what I'm going to do, oh, and green. So I'm using all my colors except for black. But what I'm going to do before I start my background, I'm actually going to pre-mix myself 2 custom colors. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I want my background to be really out of focus. And I want it to have some soft colors and some complementary colors that are going to work with the autumn leaves that we're going to be putting in. And I don't want it to go white on me by accident. So I'm actually going to be pre-mixing myself a tan color to use in replacement for white when I want light areas, and this rusty color, which I will be using as my complementary color in the background for my leaves. I'm going to use my medium brush to mix the paint, so that way I can kind of keep it in a controlled small area on my palette so you can see how I did this. So my light color, how I got to that was I used white with a, let me turn my palette so it's a little bit better visibility. So white with a little bit of brown. I'm just looking for a light tan color to utilize, again, in substitution for white, because I don't want my background to go white on me. So that's about where I'm headed with that. Just a light tan color is totally fine. I'm going to rinse my brush off so I can utilize it to show you how I got to that other color. So just washing and drying my medium brush, making sure I don't have any of that light color still left on it. And then how I got to this color, I'm going to thin it out on the side of my palette so you can kind of see the true color of it, was I used yellow, a little bit of red. Red can be very overpowering, but I definitely want to show or have that red within it, and brown. Let me turn my palette again so maybe it's a little easier to see. So the 3 of these colors, when combined in about equal parts, are going to give you this beautiful rusty color. I want mine a little bit darker than that, so I'm going to add a touch more red and a little bit more brown, and that's going to deepen the tone of it. And you can have it really as light or as dark as you want. I'm just going for something that's a really rich, kind of reddish brown tone, and it's going to look really pretty with the combination of the other colors that I'm using, and it will be used as well in my leaves that I'm going to be using later. So those are my two pre-mixed colors. Now what I'm going to do is I'm picking up my large brush. I'm going to utilize a lot of this lighter color for a large area of my background. So I picked up a good amount of that, and I'm going to be applying it in this kind of rubbing, scrubbing type of technique. I don't need to cover the whole entire canvas, but I am covering a good amount with this light color. So that way it ensures that I have that light, bright kind of day feel to it, but without going, again, white on me. And I want to make sure that I have a good amount of this, so that way when I go to put the other colors on, I can just kind of intermingle and introduce them to this without them being too overwhelming. So now that I've got a good area there, and you can see I didn't color it all the way in, maybe now I'm going to pick up some of my pre-mixed rusty color and start introducing that. I'm going to utilize this rusty color more in the upper region of my canvas as opposed to the lower region, because I know my leaves are going to be down here and they're going to pull that color in really well. So I don't necessarily need to utilize it all over my canvas, but a good, couple of areas works just well. I just picked up some yellow paint. I'm going to incorporate some yellow up in through here. Then maybe I'm going to pick up some brown paint. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of alternating these colors so I can have an assortment of out of focus, really natural, neutral tones, but with a little hint of the autumn kind of colors to them. I think I'm going to go a little brown up in this top right hand corner. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit of my rust color. So right now I'm just kind of alternating rust, brown, well, my pre-mixed rust color, brown, yellow, and I'm going to start to utilize green in a minute. So you don't have to utilize yours in the same order that I am. I'm going to pick up a little bit of green now, kind of bring this down over on this side and through here. And I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush. I want to be able to kind of intermingle these colors with each other. So I tend to not use a ton of paint initially, and then that allows it to kind of dry on the fly, and then I can kind of keep adding to it as it's drying. So it's just, as I'm doing a process like this, I really am just going for something that is nice and out of focus. These colors, I want them to all kind of talk to each other. You might find that you want to do multiple layers. I'm picking up green and brown at the same time right now. You might find that you want to do multiple layers on yours. If you decide to do that, what you can do is you do one layer, let it dry, and then you can come back in for a second layer and do a similar process. And what that'll do is that'll help it to get nice and smooth looking. I'm picking up brown and yellow right now. And throughout this process, you may have noticed I have not washed my brushes. So when I'm doing an out of focus type of background like this, I really tend to not wash my brush unless I run into trouble. And the trouble would arise or come about if I'm doing this and all of my colors started to turn into one solid shade and I wasn't able to get this soft, out of focus look that I was shooting for. And if that happened, then I might decide to wash and dry my brush, but I tend to just kind of go over other areas, let them dry a little bit, come back if I want to. I'm picking up some, let's see, brown and maybe a little bit of yellow coming down into this bottom right-hand corner. So brown and yellow. And again, I'm just kind of overlapping my colors. Yours may end up totally different than mine. You might really love the green in the background and utilize more of that. I think I'm going to pick up some of that original color just to help get these to start to talk more to each other and get them to be nice and soft with one another. And then as I'm tidying up here, I've got the majority of the area done. Now I'm just going to help the colors kind of blend in with one another. So what I did was I picked up a little bit, I still had the background color on my brush, and then I picked up a tiny bit of water on my brush. So this will help to get the overall look of it smooth. So if you have a tiny bit of that gray or the tan color, dip your brush in your paper or in your water and then tap it on your paper towel. You've got a real soft, thin coat of paint on your brush, and this will help to get these colors to really smoothly blend together. But you don't need a lot of water, and you don't want to scrub it really hard, because that water will in essence kind of lift the paint off of your canvas if you scrub it too hard. So I'm just going to kind of delicately go over my canvas as it's drying. I might find that maybe I want a little bit more of this darkness in the middle. I know that my bird is going to be in this middle area here, and the darker that middle area is, the more the bird will pop out. So if you're finding that you want that a little bit darker, feel free to make those adjustments. Maybe I want a little bit more brown down in through here. So you can certainly feel free to have fun with these colors. Again, you can let them be really light and soft and airy feeling. The more you want your bird to pop out, the darker you're going to want this area in through here. And then you just kind of keep fiddling with it, adjusting it to your visual preference. And then when you feel like you're all done, we are going to be switching. Well, actually, let's use our chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away. And I might fiddle with mine a little bit more. I'm going to put my large brush away when I am done though, and I'll take out my piece of chalk in preparation for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're drawing an outline for our beautiful bird. I'm going to be using my chalk. I'm going to give you a couple markers. We'll make some basic shapes to start it off, and then hopefully by the time we're done, we've got a beautiful outline that looks like the bird is totally in flight. So I'm using my piece of chalk. I'm going to direct you into some markers. So the first mark I'm going to make is right about here. So where this mark is if you were to kind of look about from top to bottom of your canvas and kind of pick a center point. Oops, my finger was a little high. A center point, and then you're going to come a little to the left, maybe about half of an inch to an inch to the left, and that's where I have this marker. When I teach birds, I typically teach that they can all be started with two shapes, an egg for the body and a circle for the head. So we're going to make the egg first, with the pointy part being where the tail is. So you can do this with a pelican or an eagle or a flamingo. The bodies can always start as an egg, and the head can always start as a circle. So this is going to be my pointy part of my egg. I'm going to give you another marker, which is going to be the top part of it. So if we go maybe about, I would say maybe 3 inches to diagonally, so maybe 2 inches to the left and then up, that will be the top part of the egg. And then I'm just going to create an egg type of shape in through here. So again, my pointy part's right here, my top is right here. I'm going to do my circle about another inch away from here. So I've got my little marker here. So it might be a little bit shy of an inch, but somewhere around an inch. And my circle is going to be pretty darn small. I'm going to have it about this size in through here, and it sits a little bit away from there. That's going to be the start of it. Now I need to connect my egg to my head to my egg. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to just take this egg down like that and connect that side like that. And then on this side, it's going to be a little bit more of a gradual into the front part of that shape. I'm going to put a little tiny beak about halfway up here. These beaks are kind of pointy and a little on the larger side for such a small bird, but they don't have to be super duper big. And if it doesn't get perfect with your piece of chalk, don't worry, we can do lots of adjustments when we go to paint it in. I'm going to do a side wing over here. So I'm going to come about, I would say about halfway down my egg and over to the left, maybe about 2.5 inches. This is going to be the tip of it. I'm going to connect the tip to my body with this wavy line like that. And then I'm going to connect the tip here to this upper part of the body, about halfway between the head and the egg. And I'm just going to make a whole bunch of little bumps. This is going to end up the back wing, or the other side wing, is kind of flipped up on us. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a tail. So if you come from here, almost like in a straight line from the head, it's straight kind of diagonal type of line. I'm going to come down here maybe about 2.5 to 3 inches. This is going to be the tip of my tail, and then I'm going to connect the egg type shape to the tip. So this is going to be kind of longer feathers on the outside, and then we'll kind of bump them along the bottom edge. I'm going to start up here maybe about 1 inch or so, and then I give myself a diagonal line like that. Well, it almost might be, it's almost vertical, maybe a little diagonal. And then I'm just going to give myself a whole bunch of little bumps that are going to connect to the tip of my tail. And then I'm going to do the same thing over on the right hand side, only this is going to start right about up and through here. And then I'll give myself a couple of edges to the feathers over on this top side, but they don't necessarily have to be as dramatic as that one. And then I'll just give myself a couple of bumps like this to give myself the bottom of that tail. Now we've got the big, huge wing over on this side. So where I'm going to put the tip of it is right about in this vicinity, up in through here. So if you were to kind of travel up from the center of your head, up, and stop maybe about 2 or 3 inches from the top, that's about where I have the tip of the wing. And it's going to meet right about in this intersecting point where my egg kind of meets my neck in through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it with maybe 2 or 3 edges of the feathers. So I'm going to go up, maybe give a little bump in through there. Then I'm going to go up, maybe another little bump in through there. And then this one's just going to kind of go all the way up to there. I'm going to connect this tip to back in through here. So this is where the whole wing just spreads out in through here. So it's going to end up down in this vicinity. So we're going to have a bunch of bumps along the edge. So I'm just going to take my chalk and I'm going to start to make myself a whole bunch of bumps along the edge. You don't even have to make these perfect. We're going to, like I said, have a lot of other information on top of this. So if yours don't end up exactly as mine, no worries. I am keeping the outside edge of this kind of in a rounded type of shape, so that way it appears to be kind of opening. If you were to just do a diagonal line, you wouldn't have that form to the shape. And that's all we're going to be doing for the outline. We will be using our medium brush for the next step. So you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our bird. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using that tan color that I had, and I'm going to add a touch of black to it. So it's just a shade darker. So I've got a little bit of my tan left. I'm going to add a teeny, and if you don't have any tan left, you can certainly make some more. So I'm going to add a teeny tiny touch of black paint to it. Not a lot, just a teeny bit at a time. I know my black can really easily take over, so I know I don't want to go too dark on it. So I'm thinking this might be pretty good. I think it might be a little too dark. I'm going to add a touch of white back into it. And if yours doesn't turn out the same exact shade as mine, don't worry about it, because we're going to be doing our highlights and our shadows and all the details on the bird, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So once you've got some sort of medium tone for your gray, all we're doing is painting in the entire bird. So I'm using my medium brush. I'm going all the way up to my chalk mark. You won't be able to see your egg and your circle after this step. This is just a step to give us a beautiful base coat that is going to work really well with adding the highlights and the shadows on top of the bird. So I am just continuing to use that same gray. I'm going to my edges, sometimes using my brush, because I am using kind of a bigger round brush. I like to kind of just go into these little arcing shapes the opposite way with my brush. So if I just kind of push my brush into the edge of them, that helps me to get a nice kind of clean edge to it. And I just kind of take it and I can just pull it into the bird, something like this. And of course you probably will find your own method to get those edges, but that's a quick way for me to just keep the little shape that we've already created with the chalk mark, and just kind of get the paint to come into the wing or the feathers themselves. So it just, with this wider tip, it allows me to do it that way. And you might find that as you're doing this, your wings or your feathers or your bird take on a little bit different of a shape because you've changed the edges a little bit, and that's totally fine as well. So all birds can have different directions to their wings. They can have different numbers of feathers, so you just have fun with making this into your own beautiful dove. And as I'm coming along this side, again, just kind of manipulating my brush to capture a couple of those little edges of feathers over on that left hand side. And then for the tip of my beak, you could, again, if this brush was a little on the large side for you to handle, you could certainly whip out your small brush to get this little tip on here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and finish up this little area in through here. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this base coat on your beautiful bird here, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our autumn leaves. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are red, yellow, brown, and white. And what I'm really going to do is I'm going to make myself a lighter version of that rusty color that we had used earlier. So I've, again, magically pre-mixed it just so you can see where I'm going. But this was the rusty color that we made earlier. And what I did to that, you can just utilize that, or you can make some new stuff. I utilized red, yellow, and some more white to it. So I, in essence, took what I had and just made a lighter, more vibrant, or more alive, lighter shade of it. You could just add white to it, but what might happen if you just add white to this rusty color is it might be a little bit too dull. So if that's the case, just add a little bit more yellow and orange to it, and you're, in essence, bringing the vibrancy into it. So that's how I got this color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a couple of long stems, and then we're going to make these like teardrop type of leaves. So I'm going to have a kind of a stalk of them coming up in through here. I would say I'm going to have mine about midway up this wing, and yours of course don't have to be exactly where mine are. And the stem that I'm making right now is not going to be the forever stem. This is just kind of giving us a guide as to where we want to place our leaves. And then I'm going to have another one maybe coming out, I would say, in through here and down over here. And then I'm just going to have a little one maybe over in this bottom vicinity and through here. And then I'm just going to make a whole bunch of leaves coming off of this. I'm going to have some big ones and some small ones, but the generic kind of shape to them is going to be a little pointy at the end, and then it's going to have a kind of a bulb, if you were to think of like a flower bud, kind of where it's round in the middle and then maybe pointy at the end. That's kind of the shape that I'm going for these type of leaves. And you can have them all over the place. They can be on top of one another. They can be independent of one another. They are going to obviously be growing out of this center stem, so you can have some of them kind of coming out a little bit even further, and just have fun with it. They don't have to be in the same exact formation as mine. We're going to be giving them different colors along the process, so just feel free to, you know, have fun with this. Maybe you've got a couple that are in front of ones, but my goal is to just maybe get them coming off in different directions and have it I just picked up a little bit of white by accident, have them a little free-flowing and taking on different, you know, shapes. Some of them are going to be bigger, some are going to be a little bit more slender than others, and of course you can just have fun with this. There can be space that you can see behind. I'm going to just bring them up to the stem, but of course the stem doesn't have to be covered all the way. You can have big ones. Maybe this one is kind of going off the side a bit, so feel free to make these in whatever direction you want. And if you can still see some of the background underneath them, that's totally fine too, because we are going to be coloring them with with another layer. This is again just kind of getting it started. You can see here I'm putting that one on top of that one. I'm going to have this one kind of coming all the way over in this direction, and I'm having some of them overlap so that way they look more natural. If you put them all the same shape and in the same direction and the same size, they tend to not look as natural as if you kind of throw a little variety in the mix. If they come in different directions and stuff like that, maybe I'll have one kind of coming out over this side over here, and I'm just choosing to use this mid-tone as my base coat, so that way when I do go to add the more vibrant tones on top of it, this base coat will let them all kind of talk to one another, and again it'll make it look nice and natural. I'm going to have a big huge one kind of coming, maybe overlapping this one. Maybe it comes down in through here, and again just have fun with the shape of yours. They don't have to be exactly the same shape as mine, but I'm giving this variety to it. I think I'm going to have a really big one kind of coming up and almost touching my tail in through here, and maybe even crossing over these tips a bit. Maybe this one is going to be, I don't know, either behind these ones or in front of them. Haven't decided yet, but we'll decide when we put the colors on them later, and then just kind of coloring it in. And of course you can see where I am overlapping some of them. We're utilizing the same color right now, so when we do go to add the highlights and the shadows, that will help to separate those back out from one another. But I'm just concentrating on giving myself a little bit different shape for some of them. Maybe some of them are a little more narrow than others, especially as I come towards the tip of the stem. Maybe we've got, you know, little smaller ones on these edges here to make it look like, you know, the big fertile ones are down at the bottom. And then I just got a few more I think I want to put in through here. And again, this is Mother Nature, so they don't have to all be exactly the same, but I'm giving myself a good variety here. I think this one's going to be really huge, take up some good space over here on the left-hand side of my canvas. And that's another thing. If you find that there's any part of your canvas that feels a little unbalanced, you can just add a big ass leaf right in front of it. You know, if you want some of these coming off the top, you can certainly have it as if they're, you know, growing from a leaf or a stem off of the top. So just know leaves and petals and flowers and stuff like that, they're great space fillers. So they help to balance out paintings when you're looking for things to help fill in negative spaces. If you've got something like this that can carry a similar theme and can help you to balance that painting, you can certainly just add them wherever you feel that they're going to be necessary. So you don't have to, again, follow my formula. Perhaps you're painting, perhaps you are working on a different size canvas and you want to incorporate these colors and stuff up in an upper region. You can certainly go ahead and do that. These are, you know, they're leaves, so you can certainly put them wherever you want to. I think I'm going to put one more down here in the bottom left-hand corner, and then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of these beautiful autumn leaves on here, you can put this large or medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the body of the bird, which will include its face, its midsection and its head and its little feet as well. We're going to save the wings and the tail feather for a different step. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using that rusty color that we made for the background. I'm going to use white, brown, possibly my bird gray, and maybe a little bit of black as well. So what I'm going to in essence do is I'm going to separate out the edge of this wing in through here. I'm going to add a little bit of shadow where the body meets the tail feather. And then I'm going to give my body some form, which means I'm going to lighten up the belly area just a little bit and maybe lighten up the top of the head. And then we'll put some feet on and we'll put a beak and an eye and we'll magically be done. So I'm going to take my small brush. I'm going to put a little bit of brown paint on my brush. So just a little bit of brown paint. This is going to help me to just kind of get my thoughts straight and separate out some pieces. So this is my big wing in through here. I'm going to just take from this little corner in through here, give myself almost a little horizontal kind of line in through there, and then just go diagonally to this back meeting point in through here. So that tells me this is my wing. I don't really need to touch that right now. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my bird gray just so I don't have such a firm line in through here. So just made that blend in a little bit so I don't have to worry about that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm picking up some more of my brown and I'm going to, in essence, give myself a shadow where the body meets the tail feather. So I have brown on my brush right now. And if you want to, you can also pick up a little bit of your bird gray. So that way you have that kind of fluidity between the two of them. So brown and bird gray are what I'm picking up right now. And then I'm just going to kind of get this area to blend in or work its way into that tail feather. And if you go too dark, don't worry about it because we can certainly lighten it up when we get into really doing those tail feathers themselves. I'm really just looking for this shadowy kind of area where the two meet one another. And then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint for this area where the underbelly is going to kind of meet my feet. So somewhere in here, I'm giving a little bit of a roughed edge, so that way it looks like it's meeting some little belly feathers, and then I just kind of pull it down into that tail feather just a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of my bird gray, and I am going to get these two to blend in with one another. And I have the brown also on my brush, so this way they just kind of blend right in with one another, and I have a nice meeting point in through here. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a highlighted area right here on the bottom kind of front belly area. What this is doing is this is allowing me to give the belly a little bit of form, making it look like it's a little bit rounder and that it kind of pops out a little bit. And you can certainly, like I said, if you need to, keep picking up that base color of gray, and that will help you to get it to blend a little bit more. I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown right now to make sure I have a nice distinct edge in front of this back wing. So I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up a little bit of brown paint. Oops, I need a little bit more than that if we want to see it. So a little bit of brown paint in through here, just again to give myself this subtle edge so we can really see it in front of that wing. And then I'm going to give myself a little bit of a shadow underneath here under the neck area. So this is just brown with a little bit of my gray on my brush to give myself a little bit of a shadow underneath here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some white paint and give myself a real bright highlight up at the top of the head. So I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up some white paint. I'm going to put a bright area up on the top of the head and maybe down a little bit down that back of the neck in through here. I can also bring it into that beak area a little bit. You don't need to do much. So I put it on there, then I wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and then I'm just kind of rubbing it into the main area of the head. So this will add that extra bit of lightness. I am picking up a tiny bit more white paint so I can add a little glisten of a highlight over on the other side or the bottom side of that neck, as if the light from above might be giving it a little bit of a highlight. So just a teeny tiny bit of white paint in through on my brush is going to give me a tiny bit of a highlight and crisp up my edges so you can really see them a bit over there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up the rust color that we used for the background. So a little bit of that on my brush. This is going to give me my base coat for my beak, my feet, and my eye. So I have that color on my brush, and I'm giving myself a layer for my beak, and this of course complements your leaves as well. These birds can have these nice little pinkish pale type of beaks. I'm pulling it into the face a little bit. Then I'm going to give myself a circular area for the eye. This area is kind of the surrounding color for the eye. We will put a little black pupil in a minute, so just a little kind of circular area in through there. I'm going to give myself a couple of little toes with this same color. So I'm having mine come out in this area over here. So they're pretty big. I'm going to give myself, I think I'm going to add a little more brown so you can see what I'm doing here. So I have that rust plus a little brown. That's still going to be too similar of a color. So I'm going to pull some of this color. I just want to make sure that you see it. Really just some form of this peach color. So one, I've got two, and then I'm going to have a third little toe in through here. I will add little details to it in a minute. I'm wiping my brush off, picking up a tiny bit of black paint to give myself a little pupil inside this eye in through here. So this is going to be the little pupil part in through there. You could, I suppose, put a little tiny shadow in your beak, and then I'm going to use that black as a little bit of a shadow on my toes. So on the bottom right hand side, I'm giving myself a little bit of shape. Maybe this is where I indicate that there might be a claw. So I just kind of bring it down in these little hook type of a motion, something like that. I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and now I'm picking up a bit of white paint. So a tiny bit of white paint. I'm going to give myself a little itty bitty sparkle in that eye, something like that. I'm going to give myself a beautiful bright highlight on the tip of my beak. And of course you could certainly get this to be even brighter or reshape it if you feel that you need to. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that peach color, bring this beak a little bit higher up the nose or up the face, so you can certainly bend yours until you feel like it is in a good shape for you. It gives us a little hook down there, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of that white and give myself a little highlight on these fingers or on these toes. So I'm going to do just little maybe one, two little joints, and then maybe a little hook for the claw or something like that. And of course you can fiddle with yours all you want. And then we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our bird. We're going to do the feathers and the tail. I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using brown, white, my gray, and that might be it. If I need a little black, I'll let you know. My whole idea here is that I want these tips of the feathers to be super bright and super beautiful and white, and the dove itself is white, but I want it to feel like it's catching the sunlight. So in order to do that, I've got to keep some of this underside dark. So we're seeing the underside of this wing, the underside of the tail, and maybe a little underside of this wing over here. But the tips of here, the tips here, the tips here, the tips here, and maybe the tips in through here are going to be very bright white. As you're going through this process, if you're going about it and you're feeling like it's not going white enough for you, that might mean that you need to have more contrast, which would be your background could be dark. If you make your background a little darker, that will bring the white out a little bit more, and or the base color of your dove might not be dark enough. If it's too close to white, then the white that you're going to put on later won't be as powerful. So just know that as you're going through the process, if it's not popping enough for you, those might be the reasons why. So what I'm going to do, because we do have a nice gray base that provides us with the dominant color that I want in through here, I'm not going to be using a lot of paint when it comes to adding my little wing marks and or the shadows underneath here and on here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up some of my bird gray as well as some of my brown, as well as a touch of water, just to start. So this way I'm not overdoing the darkness of it, and I can kind of control where I want it, because I want there to look like there's maybe a little separation between some of these feathers. So I know that I want my darkest area in through here, and that's clearly not dark enough, so I'm picking up a little bit more of my brown. So I want my dark area in through here all the way down to the end of this wing where it meets the body in through here. And then as I come up, I want the separating parts of the wing to feel like they're in a natural kind of order. So if this is one of my wings, they're all going to kind of be built out of this one section in through here. So if this is one over in through here, I would have a curved line like this to all of them. You don't necessarily need to do a stripe like I'm doing for each one. I just am pretty much doing this intentionally so you can see the direction of the individual feathers. So know that they don't all have to, you're not going to just kind of go straight out. You can have a little bit of movement, and by putting this kind of carefree direction in between, that's going to help you to build them with a little bit of dimension to them. I can do the same thing with the tail. I haven't reloaded my brush. I just have that watered down kind of paint on my brush, and that gives me the separating pieces of those feathers. And I don't necessarily want it to be too distinct when it comes to those separating marks, so I can just kind of rub it out a little bit. While that's kind of sitting for a minute, I'm going to do my shadowy or my dark side underneath here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that brown and maybe a touch of black too, just so it's a little bit darker down in through here. Now I want the underside of this wing to be the darkest, so I'm just putting a little bit of my darkness underneath here, and then just kind of pulling it out like this. I'm going to put the edges of this wing are going to be really bright in a second, but I can do the same thing with pulling a little bit up into those feathers themselves. Now what I'm going to do is I think I want this to be a little bit darker in through here, similar to here. So I just picked up a bit of black paint to get this area just a smudge darker right in through here. Just again, I don't want it to go too light. I want you to be able to tell the difference between this shadowy area and the rest of the bird. So just making sure that that translates as such. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up some of my bird gray plus white. So I have the gray plus white on my brush, and I'm going to start to get these tips to blend into that center area that I just did. So I've got my white and my gray, and now I'm coming in an opposite direction. I'm coming from the tip of the feather, and I want this to look pretty natural. So I want, for me, my painterly eye likes to have all of these things kind of connecting in a visual way. So I like to overlap the colors. I'm going to be continuing to reload my brush and kind of working from the edge of that wing and just kind of working it in towards the shadowy darker area. And I'm still just picking up my white plus the base coat gray. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm reserving my bright white for the final tips of these feathers that I'm going to do in a minute. So I'm progressively getting lighter and lighter as I work my way towards the tips. And I want them to look like they're naturally just kind of going into the darkness. So again, I've got my bird gray plus white on my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here, starting at my tips and just kind of bringing it in towards the darkest area in through here. So trying to keep my hand out of the way here. Sometimes I can't, it doesn't matter what position I put my hand in, it ends up in front of the camera. So we'll just continue to try to keep it out of your way. And again, just white with my gray is what the combination that's on my brush right now, working from the tip and pulling it in towards the bird like this. And that's going to keep a little bit of that gray color on the inside. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush, and I'm going in for my bright edges. So washing and drying my brush to get all that gray and brown and whatever else could be on there off, and making sure that it's nice and clean. And I'm picking up just white paint. So I'm going to in essence do what I just did with the white and gray, only now it's just white and I don't have to pull it in as far. So I've got white paint on my brush, and I really want this to be bright. So I'm just going to kind of hit it at the edge and then give it a quick pull down into the feather. And I will do that to all of them. So I've got this really heavy at the end and then just kind of pulling it down. And you might find that you come back a couple times with this white, because depending on the type of paint that you have, yours might dry darker than you anticipated, or it might be a little bit more translucent, or you might have pulled it down too far and everything is too light on you. So you can certainly come back and just kind of keep adjusting it until you have the intensity that you want. But you can see I'm just really popping this bright white on the edges, and because I have a darker base to the right and to the left, this white will end up popping really nice and vibrant. And I'm just kind of putting it on the ends and just pulling it right towards that center, and I'm keeping it in that original direction that I had planned for these particular feathers. And of course you can certainly, you know, come back, and if one of them wasn't as bright as you wanted, just pop a little bit more white on that tip and just keep elevating it until it's as bright as you want. I'll do the same thing with this little guy, this little wing in through here, hitting that real brightness right on the tip, and then just kind of pulling it back towards where I feel it's coming from, which is the other side of the bird. So something like this, and just making sure I've got that nice transition that I feel would look pretty natural in through here. Something like that, that's looking pretty good to me. Maybe these need to connect a little bit more. There we go, because I think this would have a lot of brightness on this tip in through here. And then on this tail, so these feathers might be kind of translucent and catching even the light from the other side. So you can kind of play with how the intensity of these. I'm going to put these ones kind of bright and the tips of these ones pretty bright over and through here. But again, depending on where that light is, maybe some of your wings, especially on this kind of bird, can appear to be translucent. And even though this is the underside, you might still have some very vibrant feather. I almost called them leaves. The leaves are over here. You might have some very vibrant feathers in this direction because they're catching, or they're becoming translucent, and they're seeing the light showing through them. So you can certainly have fun with that, and then you just kind of keep tweaking it. You could even, if you needed to or wanted to, go back in that body, add a little bit more lightness and these feathers on the belly, or whatever you feel might elevate your painting to bring it into that visual preference. Ooh, I think I'm gonna, something I want to do right here, I'm gonna put a little highlight on the edge of this wing right in through here so we can really see the edge of it, because right, I feel like we're losing it a little bit with that darkness, and putting a touch of, yeah, that works. Putting a touch of a little highlight on there totally helped. And then just keep fiddling with it as much as you want to. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful bird all nice and finished, and again, just keep playing with those colors and do any little adjustments that you feel would benefit your painting, and then you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be finishing our autumn leaves. So these leaves can be any shade of this color to a dark brown to a light yellow to a red. They're autumny. They've got these autumn tones to them, and of course I've expressed my creative license and energy in creating these, so I'm just making some light, soft, vibrant kind of autumn colors to it. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to be putting darkness in my stems, in these two stems that are visible, so they look a little bit like they have more structure to them. And then I'm going to be putting veins in my leaves so they have movement to them. And then I'm going to be putting different colors throughout the leaves, like I'll use a light yellow and maybe a little bit more of a reddish tone, and get them to just have a whole lot of life to them. Once I get going on the leaves, my brush is probably going to go kind of, you know, free. It might just take over. So I will attempt to call the colors out as I'm using them, but I know that in my head I will probably just keep layering one leaf on top of another leaf, and oh, I want more red here, and oh, I want more yellow there, and it might become a process of just wherever my painterly eye takes me. But I'll try and give it as much structure as I can so you can follow along, but know that this is one of those freeing steps where just enjoy the process and let your brush do what it wants to do. Get your color palette ready to start, and then just be free after that. So I'm going to prepare my color palette, and then we're just going to have a whole bunch of fun. So when I do my stems, I'll be using some of my brown, maybe a little black, and maybe some of that rusty color that we used for the background. I have my leaf color in through here, which was my base color, so I'll use that also. I'm also going to be using some red. I'll use some yellow. You can make any shade of these that you want. You can use them straight the way that they are, but I like to kind of soften them a little bit. So I'm going to take my yellow and add a bit of white into it. So this is going to give me like a pale yellow color. You could certainly utilize it with your base coat, but when you put it on top, you'll see that it will intermingle well with it, and it'll give you some nice tones to it. So my red, you could certainly use your red. I'm just going to mix myself a color. I have a little bit of yellow and white on my brush right now, so this will give me a nice kind of dark peachy type of a color. So that can be one of the tones that I use, and then maybe I definitely am going to utilize that original rusty color. I know I'll use brown. There may be instances where I pick up red and brown at the same time, and I might even get wild and crazy and put a little bit of green in there. So the green is going to speak to these leaves being in the changing metamorphosis from them going to summer leaves to fall leaves. So if you want to incorporate a little bit of green in there, you certainly can do that. So that's how I'm preparing my color palette. I just mixed a little bit of a light yellow and maybe like a dark peachy reddish kind of color plus whatever else I have on my palette. So I'm going to wash my brush right now, and so I can get in on those stems first. In my head, I usually will tackle the stems and any like darker areas initially, and then go in for the main coloration of it, and then pop in a couple of little highlights. And when I was looking at this style of leaf, they can have, their veins can be dark or light, darker or lighter than the main leaf. So the sky's the limit on the variety here. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown, my dark rust color, and a touch of black on my brush all at the same time, just to give myself this little kind of loose darkness to my stem areas. You can use a little bit of water on your brush. I'm really just going to kind of in a carefree manner, give myself maybe a couple of veins with this dark color, as well as my stem. So just know that when I have a color on my brush that I feel is going to work well in many areas, I tend to just kind of go for it. So I started with the stem on this one, and now I'm just kind of pulling this darkness into a couple of the other leaves. And I'm not going to do it on all of them, but I might just kind of bring it up in through this one. And throughout this process, these leaves, when I was looking at them, tended to be translucent, where you could see the leaf behind it. Maybe the photos I was looking at had lots of sunshine, but you could kind of see the underlying leaf. And so I'm just going to kind of build them in on top of each other kind of way. So I'm just going to reload my brush with a little brown, that rust color, maybe a touch of black, give myself a little bit of a shadowy type of area down in through here, maybe pulling up a couple of these dark notes up some of these leaves in through here, put in a couple of veins in my leaves. Maybe we'll put one down in through here. And again, you can certainly make yours lighter or darker, or maybe as you're going through this process, the dark tones really speak to you and you want all, a deep auburn red kind of color, feel free to go for it. So I'm not going to wash my brush at this point. I'm going to pick up some of this peachy red-ish tone. So I have my dark color that was on my brush, and now I'm just kind of adding some of this redder type of tone. And you can go, like I just picked up red and black because I want to have maybe a dark one in through here. And I'm utilizing, just made that leaf grow, utilizing these dark colors to, one, give me a couple of leaves that are darker, but also start some vein process on them. So I start in the center of that leaf, and I'm just kind of pulling them out in a natural type of way to me, which would be a curved type of motion. I can utilize this red color as the dark tone on what will soon be some of my lighter leaves. So you can really just explore what is visually appealing to you as you're going through this process. And I really just like to have a bunch of different tones, especially when working on these autumn style landscapes of sorts that are going to provide me with beautiful notes of reds and yellows and these complementary colors that we've already put in the background too. So just have fun with it. I've got quite a bit of this darkness going on a lot of these. Maybe this one has my veins going in this direction, and you can see I'm just being very carefree about it. I want them to look like they're overlapping. I want them to look like they've got some, stuff that's speaking to each other. I just picked up some red and brown to get a little bit in this one that maybe goes in this direction. And I like to kind of work from the dark to the light. It makes my process a little bit more simpler. But you might find that a different approach works for you. Whatever, again, speaks to your brush, speaks to your inner artist, wherever that exploration takes you is where you'll get the most pleasure out of it, and usually where the best paintings occur. So just have fun with it. I'm just kind of picking some of these leaves to add these darker notes into them, and I think I'm going to have maybe, right now I'm still just kind of picking up red and brown. You can certainly, again, utilize whatever colors that you'd like, but these are helping me to put some little veins throughout here and giving myself these nice darker, deeper colors. I think I want one or two down in through here. That's going to have some of this nice red in it, and I'm going to start using a lighter tone in a minute to give myself some vibrancy in them. But right now, just kind of playing with how these dark ones are gonna talk to me. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just pick up, without washing my brush, I'm gonna pick up some of this light yellow and just start kind of sporadically adding it, and then I'll see what I'll want to do after that. But I've got some light yellow on my brush right now. I think I'm going to kind of maybe start up in through here. Oh, I know I'm going to like this a lot. And I'm just going to kind of give myself these beautiful light areas of these leaves, giving my kind of accentuating some of the veins that I already kind of started on this one. Maybe this one I've got just a touch up in through here. Maybe that one stays dark. Maybe this one's going to get a light, maybe a light kind of vein. Oh, I just had a twinge in my neck. A light vein up in through there. Maybe this one's going to have a light side to it over here. And you can really play with the form on these leaves as you're adding these light and dark areas. So if you want an area to pop out, just give it kind of a light feel to it, or a highlight to it. If I want this leaf to pop out in front of that one, I can just kind of put a light edge there and then just pull these light colors down towards that stem. And I can certainly use a little white too if I wanted to. I'm gonna still picking up that light yellow color. Maybe I'll have this leaf in through here, give myself more lightness on that stem, and just kind of bring these lighter notes down towards the side. And of course you can pick up your other colors if you want to and explore any type of rendition of this that feels natural to you. I think I'm going to have some of this light yellow over here, maybe some on this end, and here's where my brush is going to start to go wild. I can feel it. It's starting to let loose. I can always tell, like, there comes a point where I'm like, okay, most of my stuff is in place, so now let's just, let's just let happen what's going to happen. I do have some other areas of some of these that I want to maybe, like, in through here, put some of that original color on, the base color that we had, but I am totally digging this light yellow. So I'm just letting it happen. I'm letting it kind of take over at this point, and I will probably, I'm sure, get some of the other colors in a minute too, but right now this light yellow is really speaking to me, so I'm just gonna kind of roll with it as I'm working on some of these. I think I want that to emerge, kind of bring this in through here. I'm picking up some of my red right now because I want to have this one have a nice edge to it, and same thing with this one. I don't want to lose it, so I just put a little red on my brush. Let's see. I'm going to pick up some of my original color right now on my dirty brush, so I can utilize the colors that are on my brush and get it to kind of, I don't want to say blend in, but definitely make sure that I have all of my areas painted in. So sometimes when you're going through a step like this and you become a little on the chaotic side like I do, and you let your brush kind of take over, you do run the risk of getting it too dark or too muddled or losing your edges. So I do like to kind of sometimes come back with that original color and just make sure that everything that I had wanted to happen did happen, or if I lost an edge, like I feel like I lost that edge in through there, so I just kind of brought back a little darkness into it. And you can do that if these two, you want to see the difference between them, you just need to add more contrast to one of them. So maybe one of them needs to be lighter or darker than the other one. And that's going to help to allow the viewer to see the difference between from one to the next. And then I just kind of keep fiddling as I'm going through. Now I'm just kind of looking at each one and just maybe adding a little tweak to it to see if there's anything more that I want to do on a particular leaf. So if I want this one to kind of stand out or move in front of that one, I can just pick up some more brown. And you know, the colors again that I was using, I've got my light yellow, I've got my red, I've got my brown, and I just really start to explore and let them all kind of talk to one another. I don't want any one to over dominate the other one. So if I do feel like, you know, something is screaming too much, I might end up coming back and lightening it up a bit. Or maybe I just am putting light yellow and white on my brush. Maybe I want a couple of lighter tips here and there just to give myself a bit more sunshine. So feel free to, you know, get those edges to pop a little bit more if you want them to, and then just keep fiddling with it. So I will probably fiddle with mine a couple more minutes, but we do have one little step left to go, so you can fiddle with yours all you want, and then when you feel like you've got your beautiful leaves in the tonal value and the brightness that you want them in, I keep adding little tips of sunshine. I love sunshine tips. You can certainly, if you can ever stop doing yours, as I'm having a very difficult time stopping mine, once you stop yours, we'll be utilizing our small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I am going bottom left on this one. I'm going to sign mine with brown paint in this leaf here. And I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful flying dove, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.